All right. Thank you guys for joining us today on another lovely Wednesday with the Multifamily Freedom Chasers. Um, if I was keeping count of how many weeks it's been, I know at this point it's a lot, but thank you guys again for being here. Um, Edward, Kevin here. We'll introduce ourselves in a little bit more depth, but we are here every other Wednesday night. My name is Edward, like I said, Edward Shamirian, based out of the lovely and chaotic Los Angeles, California. People say invest in your backyard. Not, yeah, sometimes easier said than done, depending where you live. So for me, not as easy, but can still be fun. But other than that, I have property management experience, um, capital raising experience, project management, operating my own brokerage out here, and um, yeah, I've been in real estate for almost 6 years now. Grew up in a real estate household and kind of just went from there and went into the massive multifamily space that we're in now. And it's been a fun ride and hoping to continue the journey. Let Kevin introduce himself as well.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, so my name's Kevin Kohler. I'm a commercial broker located out in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. My team and I service the entire Southeast United States. I've been doing brokerage now for almost 8 years, and we are asset class agnostic and location agnostic for the most part. We hunt down deals for our clients wherever those deals might be. Property management experience as well, syndication experience, and co-manager of a real estate fund that is being launched in September. Um, I think that's the quick rundown. So thank you all for coming here on a Wednesday evening, and we're looking forward to digging into our deal sourcing, underwriting, and broker relations.
Definitely. And guys, just real quick housekeeping. Participate when you can. Get active in the chat. Don't be afraid to chat with each other. Introduce yourselves. And then we'll show you other ways as well. You can interact with the community in a few slides. This is the Florida deal that Kevin and I are both GP on. And what really brought us together to work on or to be on this call every other week. So we can give you more details about that if it's something you guys are interested in. We've talked a lot about it in the past. So previous recordings will have us referencing this properties. This is the Instagram handle for all of our team members. Feel free to connect with us, tag us, share, post with us. We'd love to connect with you guys. So please, we like to be accessible. So please feel free to reach out. And here's a quick look at our schedule if you're not aware of it or if you don't have it written anywhere. Alternating Mondays, alternating Wednesdays. We'll always be here, unless we let you know otherwise. So you're gonna get a good group of we have a great group of leaders here, all covering different topics from an activation Zoom, which is more widespread, more interview style with people who are in the game, asset management, multifamily financing, or deal sourcing and underwriting, which we're going to talk about today. Here's some places that you can find us: WhatsApp, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and Facebook. All great ways to connect with us and the rest of the community, which I think is as important, if not more important, because you never know who you're going to meet. That Florida deal I showed you guys earlier was a product of networking people in the community. So keep that in mind. And here's a quick, easy way to access the WhatsApp group. Scan it, take a picture of it. If you guys miss it or what you have any technical issues, just reach out to us. My phone number is in my name on the Zoom. So you guys will be able to contact me anytime pretty easily. So that's it for that. We do one other thing, actually. I'm going to post a link and a code in the chat. That's going to be for the calculator that we use to underwrite and that we have shown a lot of examples and scenarios and gone through multiple times on these calls. So use use the code, use the link. This is just a real quick screenshot of it. You guys will see a lot of different people using it. It's a Michael Blank SDA calculator. So if you have any questions about this, let us know, reach out. But the code and the link are in the chat. All right.
That's a
So we did have
new addition as of this week. Sorry, Ed.
yeah. So
Point that
it's a
out.
great little discount for you guys, and it should help out. We reference it a lot. We use it all the time. So it's a great way to underwrite your deals and follow kind of where we go because we kind of go scatter on that calculator and give a lot of tips and tricks. I think that's another cool part about it is learning how to use it in an accelerated process. Um, and then we did have a question come in. Um, Bruce, would you like to introduce yourself and then just give us a quick recap of what that question was?
Yeah, hi, I'm Bruce. Like Edward, I'm also out in California. I basically have a W-2 corporate job in tech, and like real estate is kind of a side hustle. I came to it like my friends involved in real estate, so that's how I kind of got interested in it. And like their family's like way involved. I've sort of done like an LP deal as a passive investor. And I also have like a little back house I rent, so I'm like a little bit of small scale property management experience because I self-manage that. And then, yeah, and so I was trying to like understand this whole multifamily space a little bit. So I've been starting to just explore it and explore out of state deals. Just because, like I said, I live in California, like I said, and it's just, I'm more interested in cash flow, and California is always basically it's an appreciation play for the most part. So anyway, my question was, so I was looking at, an out-of-state deal that the broker sent in, and, my question was, like, it's basically the strategy is I want to do like forced appreciation. So I'm looking for, heavy or maybe light value add. And then to improve maybe the operational efficiency, like vacancy is bad or like the rents haven't been kept up the market. So that type of deal. So like a broker sent me a deal and said, it's a great deal. And then I ran the numbers. I looked at his current T12 and the OM, and then just to do like analysis, I have the deal analysis spreadsheet. I put in the pro forma numbers just to even like try to bias the deal in terms of his favor, just to like look at it, give it a hard look. And then so I put in those like pro forma rent numbers. And then like even with that, the only way I could make the deal work was to significantly lower the purchase price by about like another like 1.5 million below what he was asking. And this was a 16 unit building in the Midwest to kind of give you an idea. And so I think my question is more of because these spreadsheets all basically they work the same, like, and like it's real estate is essentially like four doors in a house, and like building materials, they cost what they cost, the labor costs what it costs. So I guess my question is everyone just finding as you have to just do more of these deals to kind of get to the good ones, because like the broker strategy is to just sort of bid as high as possible and hope the person on the other end doesn't know how to analyze and do due diligence. And then so like you pull the broker down to a more realistic number by just saying, no. Like I've run the numbers, like even using your pro forma, it won't work without lowering the asset price. So I guess that's kind of my question is what are people finding that way? And is that the trend? And the other comment I'll make is what I'm also seeing is more of these like private lending app fund deals pop up. You don't see as many of these like passive, real estate deals, but more of these like I'm seeing that on some of the lists I sit on pop up more, and because it's like, well, why not be the bank with these high interest rates? So I think it's just my general question if that's kind of
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. So a lot to unbox there. I appreciate the participation. I know Kevin has an answer for you for sure.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things there, and we can't tackle them all in one answer. That's too many questions. So
Yeah,
what I
definitely.
would say first and foremost is like, as a broker, I guarantee you, whatever you're reviewing, the seller probably wanted a higher price from that, right? So like brokers are in the middle trying to keep sellers realistic to a degree, but it is our fiduciary duty as their listing brokers to get them the most money for the deal. So there's that high wire act that a real estate broker is going to be playing with them on, trying to do the best for them, but also make it realistic to get a sale. Now, if you're talking about what is the overall asking price of that deal?
He said he asked for like 3 million, and he said it came down. I think they were originally asking for like 4 or something like that. So he was saying like, oh, we already came down.
Okay,
But then,
so there,
I ran the numbers. I'm like, okay, fine. And then with the interest rate, like I think I used like his preferred interest rate of 5.8 or 6 or
Okay,
something.
but I mean, so they were asking 5 or 4, then they came down to 3, and you're saying you underwrote it and maybe 2-ish makes more sense?
Yeah, 2 to
Okay,
2.4. So
so that's, significant cut of the asking price, right? So just like if you're looking at buying a house, like a certain percentage under asking price is totally acceptable and expected. And then if you're taking $1 million off of a $20 million property, like sure, or a 15, or even maybe a 10, but like, when you're cutting double digit amounts of what they're asking off, they're probably doing something wrong, or that just might be an inexperienced broker that said yes to whatever they could to get the listing to then get buyer leads out of it, which is a sad but true fact of some brokers. Um, so at the end of the day, the underwriting, like that is why we underwrite so heavily. Like you got to be conservative on your approach. You got to think about how you're going to run the asset. And at the end of the day, if every deal was like marketed correctly, then they'd be flying off the shelves and like it would be a lot harder to find deals. But the fact is, there's properties that sit out there because they're either marketed wrong, the seller doesn't have their financials in a row to then have it marketed appropriate by the broker. The broker doesn't know what they're doing. Like there could be a million different reasons. So to easily answer your question is, yeah, stuff like that could happen, and it's probably going to happen to you all the time. Now it's never going to hurt to ask, where you can say, hey, look, I ran everything. I looked at it with the current interest rate environment, with everything else going on, with your rent roll, with where we could take the property. Like I wouldn't even be comfortable unless we did like 2.2. And if the broker thought there was room there, then he'd be like, you know what, go ahead and write an offer, and I'll present it. But if they thought that was just a waste of their time, they'd usually tell you. So I would say, like, good job on the underwriting, and probably just move on to the next one. But definitely ask the broker, like, hey, like I did my homework, and like this is where I feel we could possibly get some business done.
okay, thank you. Yeah, I just didn't want to insult him either because I was like asking for a bit of a haircut and
No, I mean,
okay.
don't worry about insulting them. Like they're just trying to do the right thing for their seller so they could get, paid their commission and move on to the next deal. Um, it's that act, right? Like they don't want to be wasting time. So the sooner you're going to be able to tell them, like, hey, I think it should be here, and if they know the seller is just not going to play with that, then that's better for them to know that like you're not going to do anything on that deal either. But the best way to keep the relationship growing with that potential broker is they say, hey, look, like I'm sorry that this one's not going to work out, but definitely keep me in mind on the next one. Make sure I'm on your mailing list, like all that other stuff. And I look forward to being able to review your next listing. And then they won't take, personal insult to it unless you go in and like attack their math or anything else. But a lot of brokers, they understand that it's business and not personal anyways, and they can be professional about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree
Thank
with
you.
everything Kevin said, but I want to add a couple things real quick too. Remember, there are many different types of buyers. Just like there's many different types of LP investors, right? You mentioned you're an LP investor. You and I and Kevin, let's say us three, we may all be LP investors and all look at deals differently and want different things, and it doesn't make one more right or wrong than the other. So that's one where I'm going to start off with that one. Because remember, we're looking for deals. It's not a deal unless there's something there that is priced right. There's an opportunity involved that no one else saw. I know something no one else does. Not no one else, but like I know something about that area. I have boots on the ground and built a base there. I have some advantage that you may not have, hypothetically, right? So with that is every person on this call is going to be a different buyer, right? So when you have that many different types of buyers, this deal may, for you on a syndication model, not work. Remember, the syndication model is already difficult to find a deal for, and why you're not doing 15 of them a year, because you're already cutting the returns 70 to 80% of the total, right? I mean, you're cutting 20 to 30 because that's what the GPs are taking, right? But what if the deal works at 100% ownership and someone just goes and buys it outright and has no debt? Now it's a completely different conversation, right? So there might be a buyer that works at that price. are you limiting your buyer pool by pricing it high, for example, and the seller, like Kevin was saying, wanting X price and sticking to it? 100%. It always comes down to pricing, right? But there could be someone out there that it works for. It just won't be us a lot of the time because we call it a deal for a reason. We don't just say we're buying real estate, we're buying a deal, and that's what we call it because that's what it is, right? So that's kind of two big points I want to make. On in addition to what Kevin was saying, because at the end of the day, if it was that easy and every deal or every property we analyze we're throwing offers at, shoot, Kevin, how many would you have? 20 to 30 a month?
Yeah.
Like they are hard to find for a reason, but that also makes it when you do find it, it's like, oh man, like that excitement, all that underwriting and stuff. That's where the returns and the worth, it's worth it, right? Is the best way I can put it. So that's kind of our outlook on it. And again, I agree with Kevin. Sometimes there's two sides to the coin, right? You never know the full story, but always build the relationship. I love that advice. I love that advice as well. Any other questions on that specific topic, or Bruce, anything you want to add to that? Hope we covered it all. I know you asked a couple questions.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, that makes a perfect sense. You kind of confirmed what, like, I just like to sanity check at what I've been finding because I'm like, well, this is what the numbers say, but I'm kind of new at it too, so there might be other like nuances I'm missing. So like you guys covered it perfectly. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, you do want to, you know, every broker appreciates constructive criticism, but not like complaining about how they're marketing it or trying to like tell them how they could do better, like, but being able to say like, hey, like, what am I not seeing that you saw to price it, at that level? Like my rent roll, that you gave me is this, and our pro forma rent roll is this, and like Ed knows, I love telling everybody that when you get an OM from a broker, it's as good as toilet paper. Like all the numbers on there are based on so many assumptions because they're trying to market it in the prettiest light. And so that's why it's always so important to get that recent rent roll in T12 and determine it on your own, and then kind of see what the differences are. So overall, being able to tell them like, hey, I would love to see this be a deal, but like, here's what I have. What did I miss? And if they can't tell you, then it's like, all right, well, just keep me in mind for the next one, and that's all. It's all right.
Mhm.
Even on the investor side of things, it's when we're talking to an investor on a deal, we might see the numbers match what that investor told us they want to invest in, but maybe they just didn't like something about the market or something spooked them, and that's okay. I'm not going to burn the bridge. I'm going to say, hey, I can't wait for you to invest with us on the next one or the next one or the next one. But like, I'm going to keep asking you until you tell me that you don't want to ever invest with our group, because I know that I'm going to present you deals that supposedly fit what you told us you're looking for. And on the broker side, it's the same. Like, when somebody tells me they want to get added to our email list and considered for the next offering, hey, that's great. Like, when I get that listing and I send out the material, it's going out to one more person that might say yes.
Definitely. And one thing I want to show you guys real quick, just because it makes it easier than me trying to explain it without the visual to it. Focus right here, the investment summary. The numbers and all of the returns that they have listed here may be enough for you to be attracted to the deal. But if you're not following their exact format of how they're acquiring it, which may not fit what you're looking to do, these returns are going to shift. If you're not putting the financing, or if the LTV 60%, but you're not putting 40% into it, then these numbers already are thrown out the window because now your debt's changed. A lot of things have changed. What if you're not getting it at the same interest rate? They have it at 6 interest only. Like, see, this is just one snapshot. And again, I picked a random OM in my emails. I have no idea what this property, it's good or bad in between. I have no idea even where it is at this point.
Oh, it's
But
bad. I'd stay away.
So the reason why I just want to highlight this is that when you are receiving an OM, this is something important to look at because the numbers are going to be a reflection of the terms that the agent, being they, is suggesting you acquire that. But if that's not even an acquisition model that you follow or can even do, which is as important, it sounds great on paper, but if you can't execute it, who cares? Then what they're really telling you, it's don't disregard it. Just be like, hey, I'm not going to fit that acquisition model. Would the acquisition model I'm going to acquire it by make sense? And if not, then it's not a deal, right? You give Kevin and I any OM and any profit and loss or any T12 or any rent roll, and we can make it look pretty enough to where a buyer might be interested, right? Or they'd want to reach out. And we're not fluffing anything. We're not like misguiding or lying. It's like, hey, if you acquire in this wacky strategy or with 70% down, it works. Like, yeah, sure. How many people are putting 70% down though? You know? So that's something to keep in mind. And when you're looking at OM, I think tying into like this key point is look out for this. How is the agent suggesting you acquire it to hit these numbers? That's also a good conversation piece. Going back to building the relationship. Hey, do you have a lender that would lend on this property at this rate, at this LTV, if you're marketing that? And if they do, great, you made a lender connection now, for example, which could help you down the line in something else. Like meeting people in this field is never a bad thing, especially if it's in a market that you want to be in. So I think those are a couple components of it too.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was a really great question for us to kind of kick this off. So does anybody else have anything else that they'd want to bring up? Questions on either the deal sourcing side, the broker side, or anything else? Otherwise, we can kind of go into our spiels.
Irvin. Yeah.
Hey everyone, how's everyone doing? It's been a while since I've been on one of your Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Good to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So I was looking at a deal early today, and I was talking to the broker, and by the sounds of it, it's an older lady on this deal. It's a 40-unit deal I was looking at. And anyways, I was looking at the rent rolls, and I come across that they have these some leased out, and some of them seem to be like it says at will, and they told me that they don't have any leases, so it's a month-to-month thing. How would you guys take into account when underwriting deals with those into the rent rolls?
Oh, I love them. So if they're month to month, that's the quickest way to increase your bottom line revenue. You could raise their rent a day after you close.
Okay.
But if they are on a lease, at least in the state of Florida, you have to accommodate the terms of the lease until it expires.
Gotcha. Well, this is in the state of Georgia.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm going to make the assumption that it's the same, that you have to honor the current contract, right? So as the new buyer. So if it got really interesting during the pandemic because with all the eviction moratoriums, what landlords started doing was they just didn't renew anybody's leases. So all of a sudden, all these buildings, like 100 units, would go for sale, and they were all month to month. Because all you have to do is increase the rent, and I mean, in Miami-Dade County, they actually passed a temporary law that if you increase the rent, you had to give them more than the 30-day notice that the state statute stipulated, because there were so many people coming in and raising rent by like 25%. 30%, because that's when the rents were just exploding in value. So what you have to look at is that's an opportunity for you as a potential buyer when you're underwriting it. Underwrite it as normal, but in terms of your ramp up to get to market, it's going to be faster because your average rent is going to be able to get increased within 30, 60 days of closing.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because when I looked at it, what I saw was about 30% of these, 30%, which are, I believe, 16 to 18 units out of the 40 units, are actually month to month. Do you think that would hinder once taken over?
So I think that's super sexy. But what I would say is, as a caveat, with that percentage mix of the mix being month to month, you don't want to just go in and do that to everybody, because what if they all decide
Right.
to move out, right? So then maybe you and your team formulate a staggered plan of rent, raising rent by a couple units per month, and
Mm,
maybe offer a few people some cheaper renewals, and like you can play with it a little bit, but it gives you as a future buyer that flexibility. Whereas if everybody's fully leased, then you're just stuck to following that rollover of the rent roll.
And
gotcha.
and another thing too, just because you acquire it and they're on a month to month, doesn't mean you have to all of a sudden decide A or B. Like you're not forced to make that decision right away. Do you have
Right.
a plan? Look, let's be fair. Most of the deals we're looking at, you're gonna have a value add component. You're gonna have, especially on interior of units, especially if they've been there a long time. You can have a tenant there 7, 8 years, no one stepped inside, and it may be in great condition. Doesn't mean it doesn't need updating, and doesn't mean those updates won't bring a higher rent, bring increasing your NOI. So then it's at that point, exactly like Kevin said, you're playing, you're scheduling at that point. Hey, I have ABC XYZ. There's 3 buildings, and I have 4 units here, whatever. So you just coordinate that and plan accordingly, and then you divide and conquer, and you become efficient. You have more flexibility on the efficiency as well, which I think
Yeah.
is very valuable, especially when you're over multiple buildings and over an area. But keep this in mind as well, because every state's different. You mentioned Georgia. We've talked about Florida. Don't even get me started in California. Leases month to month, 10 years, nothing matters. Just good luck anyway. At
I,
the end of the day, that's why we've harped so much in the past of know your market, know what you can and can't do. I've legit been on calls with brokers, and again, it is California, but they're like, the pro forma rent can be 10 times what I wrote it. It doesn't matter. I'm like, oh, bye, thank you. Like, you're never getting there. Okay, good to know. But reality is, what you can and can't do is very like reliant on that. Oh, one more thing I have to bring up real quick. Sorry, another point.
okay.
While you're in escrow, this is as important as um when you're not, right? Because that's what escrow can be anywhere from 3 to 4, 5 to a year. Who knows how long your escrow is going to be? Leases are going to become due. Your seller, depending how hands-on they are, or the management company, whoever is running the show there, is going to have leases come up. What decisions are they making? How are you inheriting the property? Because at the end of the day, you're stuck with those decisions more so than the decisions they made 6 months prior, because those are fresh. Those are starting a new clock, right? So it's that communication with the seller or the management company, whoever it is, saying, hey, this is kind of like our plan with any of the leases coming up, or just tell them to wait outright. But sometimes they have to cover their bases too. Like, what if something happens, you don't close, and they're stuck? They're not going to put themselves in a bad position hoping you follow through, because it's real estate, man. Anything happens.
Yeah.
To the
And I've got,
last second, anything.
sorry, Ed. And I've
No,
got
no, go
two
ahead. I know you have a
examples.
lot to that.
Yeah, so I got two real life examples on two things he talked about. So one, towards the end of the pandemic, I represented a buyer that purchased a 36 unit property. All 36 doors were month to month at closing. And so we started to implement this phase strategy. We said, okay, we'll do 8 units per month, which was a little bit intense, but 8 units per month. We're going to go in and put in notices, and my company managed the property as well. Like the seller demanded I manage it as well. So we were going in, we were starting this, and after the first 8 units were given their notice, everybody started talking, and then other tenants called and were like, "So my rent went up," and I was like, "Do you want it to go up? Like, I'll take it now." Like at the end of the day, like it took 2 months for the entire building to be okay to pay at the higher rate, which was like a $300 per door increase from 11 to 1400, just because like the neighbors were talking about, hey, my rent got raised, and so everybody just mentally was like, all right, well, whatever, I'll do it. I had one person move out of 36, and everybody was okay. And so I was like, all right, fine, let me docu-sign the leases and like let's go. And then on the other token, which I'm about to forget what it was about. So the other thing that we dealt with was in no, I lost it. It happens. It's been a long day, but
Yeah.
no. So what I do want to say about that though is on approaching this stuff, you have utmost flexibility as a buyer when you're not restricted by the tenants of the lease. Oh, I remember now. So I'm under contract right now on 72 townhouses in North Florida, for a client. And for that one, the negotiation after the contract was signed, after the PSA was executed, I immediately reached out to the listing broker and I said, hey, you know what? Our buyer wants you to not renew any leases while we're under contract. Like, let them turn month to month, please. And you know, at the end of the day, the seller, just like Ed had said, was that, well, I don't want to be at risk, you know, if you fall out of contract. So I will only agree to not renew leases after your deposit goes hard. So after the due diligence ends. And I was like, all right, it was worth a try, right? It doesn't hurt to ask, but at least, you know, on September 13th, he's going to stop renewing leases. And no matter how long it takes for the Fannie Mae loan, you know, to be done, we're going to start accumulating people to be month to month. And so by closing, we're going to have, I think it's like 5 or 6 units that, again, we can immediately go in and say, guess what, you're first. You know, we're going to raise your rent and or renovate your unit. So that is always our strategy for buyers to help them achieve their NOI faster.
One thing Kevin said that brought a thought to me. 8 units to knock out right off the bat was a lot. Speaking of in that example, right?
It was
So
aggressive.
that's another thing, right? Just because someone comes month to month, you may want them to stay if their rent's high enough or enough. It doesn't have to be high enough, just enough, because there's nothing worse than removing a tenant that's paying 80 to 5 to 90%, 95%, whatever of the market rent, and then getting someone who's new. You don't know how they are. These people have been here probably 3 years. One thing that I was realizing as we were having this conversation is like, we say tenants, we say 100 units, we say 150 units and 200 units. At the end of the day, that's 100 different personalities and people and the way they take care of the property and the length of time they've been there and the friends they make. And to Kevin's point, you could have relatives there if the complex is big or small enough. You could have friends, childhood friends, high school friends, whatever it is. And people are going to talk. At the end of the day, you don't want your first impression to be your worst one. Is another thing, because they're the people. Look, they take care of your property, and that's the bottom line. You can, as much as it looks great on paper, and our investors, and we're doing all this work, and we think like, all right, cool, we're gonna knock this out the park. One person turns on the wrong switch on the wrong time of the day, or does something that you're like, why would you do this? And it could cost you a couple of thousand, God knows how much, and you want to be a property owner in multifamily, you want to be a GP, that's the risk we run. But again, that's why the reward's so big when you go through it.
Yeah. So, Irvin, I hope that helps. Do you have
And not scare anyone.
No, definitely. I greatly appreciate your input. Yeah, I personally never owned multifamily, but I definitely want to. Like I said, I've personally managed. I've done landscaping in South Florida, managed over 700 units in apartment complexes in the landscape industry. So that's like through South Florida, Central Florida, and South Florida on our company. So I've done like that in commercial roofing as well and residential. So I'm wanting to get my hands into uh multifamily, and I've owned deals as well. So I want to expand my portfolio in that aspect.
Awesome. What market is this property in that you're looking at?
Well, I've been looking in Americus, Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah, in Americus, Georgia. I'm about 2 hours and a half, 3 hours away.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in
Awesome.
the Woodstock area. Yeah, so I'm looking in the area here too as well, like in Marietta and whatnot. So I'm looking. I never handled big units myself, like own myself, but I want to team up with someone and be able to tackle something down of that caliber.
Awesome. Well, I mean, you're in the right community here, and I don't know if you were here early enough to see the QR code for our WhatsApp group, but send Ed or I a message, or set up a call with us. We're happy to help get you in connected to people that like working deals in. Thank you, Ed. That like working deals in the Atlanta metro area and other areas of Georgia.
Beautiful. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I could definitely be boots on the ground or do whatever I can to um to play a role in on a group or something, you know?
Yep,
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate your info.
not a
No,
problem.
absolutely. Thank you for involvement and being here.
Yeah,
And again, guys, I feel like if we wanted to go down the route between, especially Kevin, who does a lot more stuff in Florida and the manager side, but me, even what I own in my backyard, we can go down the rabbit hole of all the scary things that come with property ownership, um, in any market, in any economy, whatever it is. There's a lot of hard and difficult stuff that comes with it. It's not as flowers and rainbows as call a spade a spade. A lot of gurus talk about and like try to promote like it's the greatest thing on earth. It's hard, and you're gonna come up with like decisions you didn't even think would. Like, how does that even happen? But it did.
right.
Surprise. So we're not trying to be negative. We're just trying to be real because we've seen it happen. It does happen. Um, I've had a single tenant cost me almost 6 figures. That's ridiculous, but it happens. You know,
And
just try to
actually,
avoid it.
sorry, and Ed, I mean, he brought up another thought of mine that I'll go back to something that Bruce had said here in the beginning, where he said, when you're underwriting, labor is labor, materials are materials. That is actually absolutely not true. Um, Depending on the area you're looking at, like you could have logistical supply chain issues that increase costs of materials, and you could have shortages of manpower that increase your cost of labor. So you really have to dig into stuff. I mean, we're learning that a little bit of our deal that we did in the Panhandle, where some of our RGPs are out of Tennessee and out of South Florida, and luckily I have an old college roommate that grew up in that town. And after we started running into issues of like pricing being higher than we were projecting on capex, I asked him like, dude, what's the deal? And he's like, yeah, you're renovating stuff in the summer. He's like, that's tourist season. All the construction workers become bartenders during the summer and they make tons more money than they do on their construction jobs. So all the contractors charge more money because they have less people to pull from. And I was like, why didn't I ask you that before? And it's one of those things where you make these assumptions of, yeah, your average labor should be this per square foot, your average material should be X, and you really got to look at that micro level economy to see how are you going to accommodate that. And that's why sometimes if you're looking at, I'll just throw out like Augusta, Georgia, and you want to renovate 200 doors, like, yeah, you're probably going to get a third party company that's not from there, to mobilize, rent hotel rooms and bang it out. And it's worth paying them what you feel is more, but at least you're going to get higher quality control and things of that nature. So, um, it's really good to in your underwriting phase and in your due diligence phase, go out and get as many active quotes from contractors as possible, and not just get two or three and sit back and say you did your homework, but like keep asking everybody and anybody you can to like quadruple, centuple, whatever, verify that you are in a risk mitigated opportunity. And luckily for us, I mean, the first unit we renovated, the neighbor got jealous, or not jealous. She kept hearing all the hammers and stuff. Was like, "Can I see what you did over there?" And she was paying $12.95 a month. Walked into the apartment and said, "I'll pay you $1,900 a month if I can move in." And I was like, "Hey, that's great because that's like our year 5 number, like not 6 months after buying it." So that made us feel good knowing that we were on the right path. Yet, it took $3,000 just to get the plumbing and electrical in for a laundry machine, because we had to cut concrete and other stuff that we you don't know until you own the property and can bust walls and all that other stuff. So always bear that in mind when you're trying to figure out what your CapEx budget should be.
To that point too, and why we say, especially experience has a lot to do with this. There are people who say, I'll buy anywhere. And a lot of people will buy anywhere.
Yeah.
But your first time around, or you're just trying to get your feet wet, or you're just trying to be a part of a team, or you're just trying to understand like the risk or risk management, I should say, it's really know where you're actually putting your efforts into. Because I made this mistake early on where it's like, I'll look at anything and I'm like, I don't know if I cross the street, if it's less or more safe or less or more expensive. Then you're just spending so much time researching the area that you never end up under a deal because now you're in a different city on the next one you look at with the different rules for the first, which is the most frustrating, and a whole different economy. Like you could look at a city and if they have one anchor of the city, what happens if that anchor leaves? Well, some anchors are never leaving. But what if it does? Right? And to the point like Kevin was making, they traded the summer heat for summer breeze. Like I was waiting 5 minutes to say that joke and terrible. All right. This is why I'm not a comedian. But it was yeah, exactly. But I was like, it's funny enough. But essentially that's what it comes down to. Like we didn't know that before. Who knew like unless you live there, you don't know that. Right. And again, well, ironically, I am investing in my backyard, but it's because I know a lot and it's literally walking distance. So I know everything about the city. I grew up here. But out of state, I don't know everything. I didn't grow up there. And I'm bad with directions on top of that. So I'm screwed. Um, but we've said this 100 times for anyone who's your first call or hasn't heard me say it, really know the area and do the homework because look, let's be fair. You're not going to be the key principal on the deal, right? I would say most people in this room aren't. Actually, maybe everyone in this room isn't going to be the key principal. Almost everyone. Um, with that being said, if you're presenting this to someone to be a key principal or sponsor on a deal, or to help you raise capital if that's not your strong suit, or to manage the asset if that's not your strong suit, wherever you're trying to fit in, you have to know this stuff. You like I've told the story before, not to go on a tangent, but it'll be quick. I pitched a deal that I thought like, hey, I know a good amount about it. I think there's upside. I didn't think it was around as long as it had been passed around, which is also bad. Obviously, like brokers and anyone who talks to brokers, if 10 different people have sent you the same deal, it's dead at that point. I didn't know that. And I tried presenting it to this group, and I've never been punched so hard in the stomach in my life. And the guy was hundreds of, not if not thousands of miles away from me. I just didn't know what I was presenting, didn't know the area that well. I did one Google review after that, and I was like, oh God, this place is a disaster. Like, it just wasn't a safe area, didn't have good reviews, really bad. So it was a disaster. But I learned the hard way is like, okay, if you're gonna even remotely consider it, like know your A to Z and inside out. But that's why we don't waste our time with hate saying it like that, but we don't spend too much time on stuff that we know just don't fit what we're looking for. So it's knowing what you're looking to acquire, knowing where you want to do it, and not trying to spread yourself too thin by trying to learn 20 markets. But if focus on 2 or 3 maybe, and then see where it goes from there. And also places that you would want to invest in. Places more importantly that you know people would want to invest in. Because as much as I love California in my backyard and would love to own everything under the sun, me trying to raise capital back here is gonna suck. People are just gonna hear California and hang up on me. Like it's just the reality of it. So I'm like, okay, we're not gonna do California. And don't get me wrong, I'm down to visit Miami, so let's do Florida.
I keep seeing those listings popping up in Cali too, and I'm just like, oh, I feel bad for those guys. But either way, we have a couple minutes left. I want to be able to respect everybody's time tonight. So, do we have any other last minute questions or comments for the group?
And I really appreciate the participation today. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, those are some stellar questions. Don't feel shy now, y'all.
I don't have a question. I really appreciate you guys taking the time for this. Good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Eric, I appreciate that a lot.
So real quick, because we do have 5 minutes, and as you can tell, you asked us one question, we find a way to a million different things to respond about it. Does anyone who hasn't introduced themselves or wants to introduce themselves, where you guys are located, whatever the case is? I know few people participate, but if anyone's like your first call, third call, whatever it is, just a chance the last 5 minutes to introduce yourselves as well. I don't think there's ever a wrong time to do that, to be fair.
Yep.
I'll introduce myself. It's not my first call, but I'm Eric. I'm over in Boise, Idaho. It is a
Yeah.
relatively smaller market. I work on wholesaling, not just residential, but pieces of land or whatever else. But I'm in the process of learning multifamily. So this is all great education.
Awesome.
So
So
anybody,
besides, do you do wholesaling full time, or do you do something else as well?
it's a combination of both learning multifamily and then also wholesaling.
Awesome.
So it's a great way to make connections, but and also learn the market as well too.
Yep.
And just the deal from A to Z,
And I mean, Boise's a great growth market. I mean, I've heard amazing things about it. And Ed, you've done some wholesale stuff as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah. There's a couple people on here, so yeah, don't be afraid to speak up and introduce yourselves, and definitely, that's one of the things about multifamily freedom chasers. One of the things that attracted me to the group is, people coming from all walks of life. They're trying to get stronger in their skills with multifamily. They're trying to network more. Some people are looking to take down their first deals, get together to do deals. I mean, that's, Ed and I did that, like just put our heads together to figure out how to get stuff done. So there's a lot that we can learn from each other to be open and collaborative rather than competitive, because there's enough damn real estate to go around for everybody. So that's awesome. Brian?
Yeah, hi, it's my second call. So it's good to be here. But yeah, I'm a real estate investor in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But I only have one single family rental, so I'm trying to upgrade my game. And I called some brokers today using the Michael Blank Excel. It's just a starter, so it's totally possible. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, welcome. Hopefully you can keep pulling in info and growing and learning with us. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yeah, Bruce.
Yeah. So
Yes, I just had a quick question. You don't have to answer if someone else wants to go, but like Ed, you mentioned like a tenant cost you 6 years worth of rent or something. My curiosity was it in California, and was it because of all the regulation? That's what I
almost six figures, and
Oh,
yes and yes and yes, kind of. It's California, so yeah.
no,
If you're gonna
I
get,
live here. I understand.
that's why I was like, if anyone, yeah, I just say that and sometimes enough. But look, again, it's kind of like what we sign up for to a certain extent, where we know the market that we're in, we know the risk. And to the last point I want to make, I guess, and a big one I always make on these calls, the same way our conversation earlier, there's a million different type of buyers and a million different things that people look for when they purchase. Every single market has their good and bad. I don't care where you look. I don't care what city, state, county, zip code, street. Everywhere has their good and bad. Some worse than others, some better than others. Don't get me wrong. But everywhere has their own monster. So you're not avoiding all risk by buying in X city. You're avoiding that specific risk, but there's other ones that you still have to deal with.
Yep. Irvin, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, another question. I actually had a question upon regarding rent rolls. When you're looking at the rent rolls and looking at the tenants, how does one come about confirming those are the tenants and that they're employed and whatnot? How would one come about it on that, doing that due diligence process and whatnot?
Yeah, so
The
sorry, Ed, you want to take it?
I was just gonna say the short answer is the due diligence you can't really verify unless you go one by one. The furthest extent homework you're really going to be able to do is review their leases. Anything
Okay.
further than that would just take doing much more due diligence, which on 120 units, are we really doing that deep dive?
Right.
Probably not. Are we
Okay.
reviewing the leases though? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so you got getting a copy of every lease is almost impossible until you're under contract, right? But once you're under
Correct.
contract, yeah, you get a copy of every lease, you read them, you make sure the names are the same, all that
Mhm.
basic stuff. And then you gotta ask them, like, your property management company or you, the owner, like, what do you do to vet them? You know, like, do you call the references? Do you call the employer? Do you look at pay stubs? Like, ask those questions and understand their processes. And if they're like, yeah, yeah, they just apply and we, take it at face value, then uh-oh, you know. But it's near impossible and not even in some areas legal to be a third party and like request, pay stubs and stuff of a tenant.
No, yeah, I totally understand. Just to
Yeah.
be able to see that, they're in good standing and when one makes investment, just
You want
to
to ask for
Yeah,
the receivables report, so you can
yeah.
just see like who's past due and stuff of that nature. But
Okay,
beyond that, yeah, there's some limitations there where you have to take a little leap of faith.
gotcha.
And
Okay.
and again, you do spend money before going into contract and having the right or even the leverage to request those documents. But realistically, that's just a cost of doing business, and there's some cost you can't avoid, which
Got,
is getting to that point. Now, would you rather go all the way through and make a multi-million-dollar mistake, or pay a couple whatever thousand to find out?
Yeah.
That's
gotcha.
different.
And if you're good with accounting and all that type of stuff and have the time to go through it, you could always ask for the past 12 or 24 months of bank statements of the property management company's operating account, and then try and match the T12 income that they say they received of rent to the
hmm
deposits made to the account. That's a,
Gotcha.
that's another way to just double verify that what they're claiming is in fact true.
hmm
Uh, but many times those numbers might not match, and then you're going to have to go back to the property manager and be like, okay, here's a discrepancy. Why?
Okay.
And then, there's things of that nature. But in terms of knowing, like, are they really good or not? You can ask if, how many tenants are on voucher programs or any rental assistance or stuff like that. But if they're there and there's no past due rents, you're gonna have to just assume that they're paying their rent on time.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And,
Real
and
quick. Oh, go
oh,
ahead.
and given to that circumstance, I have heard that that's why one asks for the T12s, right? How far back should one look back into T12s and whatnot?
Well,
Should one just see like the prior year, or should one go like to a
if,
certain?
if you can get 24 months, that's great. But almost all
Okay.
sellers are gonna just do 12.
Okay.
And I
You're
know,
just hoping the 12 is current.
yeah.
Okay.
And I see SD mention estoppel letters. That could work on smaller properties, but on triple digit properties, like, you're usually not even getting estoppels. You might get an affidavit of estoppel where the seller is signing an affidavit claiming everything they've told you is true, about security deposits and rent and all that. But almost every property management company scoffs at the thought of having to get an estoppel letter from 230 tenants, and they find their ways to not have to do it and making the attorneys say it's okay. And I also see SD asked a question in the chat about how and where to meet prospective investors for raising capital. That is good old fashioned networking. Put yourself in conferences, multifamily conferences. It is old fashioned. Grow your database, stay in touch with them, make sure they know that you're looking for investors at all times to do deals with or bring deals to. But it is a lot of the times people think that it's just going to come to you if you get the right deal. You still got to pound pavement and build a database and build those relationships. to get the capital to want to unlock for you. Otherwise, that powder is going to stay dry and wait for a deal they do feel comfortable with.
I'm gonna end on this note. I appreciate all the questions and participation. We do need to stop here. We're a little over as well. But the last thing I'm gonna say is the first time you talk to someone about investing shouldn't be pitching your deal. Is the first piece of advice I would give. Build a relationship first. They're gonna trust you more than they're gonna believe in the deal. If they don't believe in you, you could give them a deal that's the best deal ever. Who cares? They don't trust you. They don't know you. You could have met at a networking event in person or contact them through Facebook or whatever outlet, but it's still the first time.
Yeah.
So
No
build that
like
rapport,
trust.
get comfortable, use a good CRM. The money's in the follow-up. And thank you all for tonight. I guess it's a good place to end it. Capital raising is something we do want to go into as well. So we might do it in 2 weeks. We'll see. I'd love to see you guys back here. Don't miss out the Zoom on Monday. As I mentioned, we have every Monday and Wednesday, and we'll catch you all. And good night. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.